There's a woman named Momana Bibi. She lived in northern Pakistan, and unfortunately she was killed by a drone strike. Now, we're told by our government that our drone strikes are very targeted, very precise. And for a while, they had literally said that there were no civilian casualties. When that became such a preposterous claim, they finally gave up on it and said, oh, the civilian casualties are very, very limited. Well, she was a grandmother, and something interesting has happened. Alan Grayson is called for hearings, a briefing really, in Washington, D.C., and her relatives got to come here from northern Pakistan and testify. So there was Rafiq-ur-Rahman, who is her son, and then there was Zubair Rahman, who's 13 years old, who's her grandson. He actually also took shrapnel in the bombing, and he had to have a lot of expensive surgery. The shrapnel went into his knee. Did the American government compensate him for that? Of course not. And then Nabila, who was the 9-year-old granddaughter of Momana, also came to the United States. I'm going to share their testimony with you in a second. It was very powerful. First, I want to go to that 13-year-old who not only got shrapnel in his leg, but actually saw his grandmother die right in front of his eyes. He said, all of a sudden, things became very dark. It was like she was exploded to pieces. Now think about that, man. A 13-year-old sees a drone strike out of nowhere, literally hits his grandmother. When the son, Rafiq-ur-Rahman, her son, and obviously Zubair's father, came to see his mom. He wanted to see her face one more time when they told her that she had passed away. He obviously wasn't there at the time. He said, I just want to see her face one more time. And they said, I'm sorry, you can't. She's literally been blown to pieces and there's nothing left of her. There's no face to see. I mean, imagine how tough that is. And then he went to go console his father, who's of course Momana's husband. And he said, I wish God would just take my life. I can't live without her. And so it's obviously very touching. Often you hear numbers, and I'm going to give you some numbers now, but it's important to put a face to those numbers so that you know that they're not just statistics, they're real human beings. But the numbers are important as well. Now, according to the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, 2,525 to 3,613 people have been killed in our drone strikes. Of those, at least 407 to 926 were civilians. So now we say that's a big range, and we say at least because the United States government assumes that anyone who is a male of military age, and that is a gigantic range, they assume that they're terrorists unless proven otherwise after we have executed them. So then these journalists have to go in afterwards and try to prove that they were civilians. These are the cases where they have proved that they were civilians. So 400 to 926 different grandmothers out there. Then some might be aunts, some might be kids, some might be adult males. Like, for example, Rafiq-ur-Rahman, who's the son in this case of the woman who has passed away, is a teacher. He comes from a long line of teachers. Their whole family are teachers. So Caitlin Hayden, who's a National Security Council spokesperson, says, no. All those numbers, that's not really true. She says, we will not be commenting on the details or locations of specific counterterrorism operations. Now, everything has to be top secret because, look, one of the things that this family is asking for is, hey, why did you kill our grandmother? Now, isn't that an incredibly fair question? Like, what? Okay, obviously it was a mistake, right? But although you won't acknowledge that it's a mistake, number one, can you do that? Number two, can you tell us why you made that mistake? What it is that you thought our grandmother was up to when you executed her? And if you've had your grandmother blown to pieces in front of your eyes, it might be a fair question. But no, the National Security Council says we cannot comment on any of that. Why we executed her is top secret and we can't share it with her family. Gee, I wonder if they're covering up for a mistake. I can't quite tell. But that same person, when asked about these strikes, said they were, quote, precise, lawful, and effective. Really effective how? Well, she was literally picking okra at the time for a holiday that was coming up. Effective in doing what? In turning the entire northern Pakistan population against us? Effective how? And precise and lawful? It's lawful to kill a woman like that? You know, The problem is, in America, so often, both this administration, the one before it, and a lot of our citizens just flippantly say, oh, it's collateral damage. Collateral damage. Well, take a look at collateral damage, see if you're as comfortable with it. And maybe you are, and maybe you're made of a different fiber than I am. And it's not to say that we're never going to have collateral damage in our lifetimes. But at least know what it means. At least know who they are, and then explain it. How are these things effective? How do you claim you're limiting civilian casualties? And what is your purpose? When some of the top experts, including a guy who worked at our own State Department, says for every drone strike we do in Yemen, we create 40 to 60 people who then actively work against the United States. So it is not effective. They are not precise. So just flippantly saying, oh, collateral damage doesn't really do it. So now, as I explained, this family actually came to Washington, D.C. to tell their story. We're going to start with Rafiq ur-Rahman. It was his mother again who was killed. Obviously, the translator is now speaking for him after he has already spoken in his native tongue. So let's listen.
In Urdu, we have a saying. Literally translated, it means the string that holds the pearls together. That is what my mother was. She was the string that held our family together. Since her death, the string has been broken, and life has not been the same. We feel alone, and we feel lost. I am a primary school teacher in my community. I come from a family of teachers. Both of my brothers are teachers, and my father is a retired headmaster. Congressman Grayson, as a teacher, my job is to educate. But how do I teach something like this? How do I explain what I myself do not understand? How can I, in good faith, reassure the children that the drone will not come back and kill them too, if I do not understand why I killed my mother and injured my children?
Look, I don't know what you teach about that, but I do know that what people in Pakistan are learning is that America is the enemy, that America rains down terror from the sky. Sometimes it hits the right target, oftentimes it does not. And it kills our grandmothers, it hits our grandchildren, and America doesn't even care enough to tell us why they did it. Now, let's go to that grandson who's, as I said, also hit by pieces of the bomb. This is the translator translating what he said in Urdu.
As I held my grandmother in the field, I could see and hear the drone hovering overhead. But I didn't worry. Why would I worry? Neither my grandmother nor I were militants. When the drone fired the first time, the whole ground shook and black smoke rose up. We ran, but several minutes later, the drone fired again. People from the village came to our aid and took us to hospital. We spent the night in great agony at the hospital, and the next morning I was operated on. That is how we spent our Eid. The doctor examined my injured leg and said the drone shrapnel was stuck in a very bad place. It could only be removed with a laser operation, which was very expensive. We did not have enough money for my operation, so I had to return home with the shrapnel still in my leg.
Amnesty International believes that the second drone strike in this case was a double tap. A double tap is when we hit a target, and then if first responders come in or anyone else comes in to help the victims, we hit them as well. It's actually one of the favorite targets of Al-Qaeda, and apparently we use it as well. So I'm glad we're the shining light upon the world. Interesting how we carry out our exercises there. And if you thought that was bad, look, the second part of what the grandson's going to say really haunts me because it goes towards how they live now, and it's in a constant state of terror.
Congressman Grayson, I no longer love blue skies. In fact, I now prefer gray skies. The drones do not fly when the skies are gray, and for a short period of time, the mental tension and fear eases. When the sky brightens, though, the drones return, and so does the fear. In the end, I have decided that welcome or not, it is important for me to tell my story. I hope by telling you about my village and my grandmother, I can convince you that drones are not the answer. More importantly, though, I hope I can return home with a message. I hope I can tell my community that Americans listen, that America is not just drones that terrorists terrorize us from above, but a country that listens and is trying to help us solve the many problems we face. And maybe, just maybe, America may soon stop the drones. Thank you.
Look, great credit to that family for being brave enough to come all the way here to tell their story. Great credit to Congressman Alan Grayson for putting those briefing together, and for Robert Greenwald, who's also made this happen through the Brave New Foundation. We've got a new movie on drones coming out. Look, the most important reason to watch movies like that and to see briefings like this is this so next time you hear somebody say, oh, there's just collateral damage, and collateral damage happens all the time. Remember this family. Here, show me the pictures. Look, remember that there are real kids, and yes, they saw their grandmother killed right in front of their eyes. Yes, they were also bombed. And by the way, these kids happened to survive, and the father was not there at the time, so he survived, although they'll never see their mother and grandmother again. But a lot of times, it's often kids who are killed as well. Dozens and dozens of kids that were killed by our drone strikes. And all we ever say is, oh, it's just collateral damage. Well, that's the face of collateral damage.